Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Niradhari Yashoda Nandana Raja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Thank you. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariva Jakajarya Ashtotar Shata Shri Shri Madesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariva Jakajarya Ashtotar Shata Shri Shri Mad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Kaur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarva Bhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunatha Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Gangamai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Anatakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Haranam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Pranath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. ISKCON Bharma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Sito Jayam Nividayat Nasta Preshu Apatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasdev, the author. By regular attendance in classes of the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right, good morning, everybody. There's so many of you in here. Okay. Okay, so today's February 16th, 2025, and we're reading Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 26. King Puranjana goes to the forest to hunt, and his queen becomes angry. And we're reading verse 20. Anuniyeta Shanakar Vironunaya Kovida Asparsha Parayukam Aha Chot Sangalalitam Anuniyeta Shanakar Vironunaya Kovida Asparsha Parayugalam Aha Chot Sangalalitam Anuniyeta Shanakar Vironunaya Kovida Asparsha Parayugalam Aha Chot Sangalalitam. Okay, please chant.
Anuniyeta Shanakar
Anuniyeta Shanakar
Vironunaya Kovida
Vironunaya Kovida
Asparsha Parayugalam
Asparsha Parayugalam
Aha Kotsangalalikam
Aha Chot Sangalalitam Anuniyeta Shanakar Vironunaya Kovida Asparsha Parayugalam Aha Chot Sangalalitam
Anuniyeta Shanakar
Anuniyeta Shanakar
Vironunaya Kovida
Vironunaya Kovida
Asparsha Parayugalam
Asparsha Parayugalam Aha Chot Sangalalitam. Okay, word for word. Anuniye began to flatter. Ata, thus. Shanakai, gradually. Viraha, the hero. Anunaya Kovida, one who is very expert in flattery. Past Parsha, touched. Parayugalam, both the feet. Ah, he said. Cha, also. Utsanga, on his lap. Lalitam, thus being embraced. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Because the king was very expert in flattery, he began to pacify his queen very slowly. First he touched her 2 feet, then embraced her nicely. Seating her on his lap, he began to speak as follows. Please repeat. Because the king was very expert in flattery,
Because the king was very expert at flattery,
he began to pacify his queen very slowly.
he began to pacify his queen very slowly.
First, he touched her 2 feet,
First he touched her 2 feet,
then embraced her nicely,
and he embraced her nicely.
seating her on his lap.
Seating her on his lap,
He began to speak as follows.
and began to speak as follows.
Purport. One has to awaken his Krishna consciousness by first regretting his past deeds. Just as King Puranjana began to flatter his queen, one should, by deliberate consideration, raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness. To attain such an end, one must touch the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Krishna consciousness cannot be achieved by self-endeavor. One must therefore approach a self-realized Krishna conscious person and touch his lotus feet. Prahlad Maharaj therefore said, Naishamat istva vaduru kramangrihim sprishadhanartha pagamo yadartha mahishya sampara rajobhishekam nishkinchananam navranita yavat. One cannot come to the precincts of Krishna consciousness unless he touches the dust of the lotus feet of a person who has become a Mahatma, a great devotee. This is the beginning of the surrendering process. Lord Krishna wants everyone to surrender unto him, and this surrendering process begins when one touches the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. By sincerely rendering service to a bona fide spiritual master, one begins his spiritual life in Krishna consciousness. Touching the lotus feet of a spiritual master means giving up one's false prestige and unnecessarily puffed up position in the material world. Those who remain in the darkness of material existence due to their falsely prestigious positions, so-called scientists and philosophers, are actually atheists. They do not know the ultimate cause of everything. Although bewildered, they are not ready to surrender themselves to the lotus feet of a person who knows things in their proper perspective. In other words, one cannot arouse Krishna consciousness simply by his own mental speculation. One must surrender to a bona fide spiritual master. Only this process will help one. Om Jnana Timrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swaparandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatan Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadhitam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lidita Shri Vashakam Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagapate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namaste. Prabhupada Valavaya Singh Sivanani Kyan Biskoti Petita Manam Kyana Gurti Hari Chakshishi Nama. Okay. So in this verse we can see that King Puranjana, he's trying to make amends to his queen, because he's upset her. He's gone out to hunt and he came home and she's just very distraught, laying on the floor in disarray. And Srila Prabhupada says, to awaken our Krishna consciousness, we need to regret our past deeds. And to do this, this requires us to have honest self-reflection. And this is something that is very hard for people to do, to have this honest self-reflection. I think in the last Bhagavatam class that I gave, I mentioned that 95% of people think they're good people, right? And so, I mean, we can just look at everything that's going on in the world and know that this can't possibly be true, that 95% of people, they're doing good things. Well, then why is there so much suffering going on, right? And that's because we have a tendency to not really be completely honest with ourselves, right? In AA and NA, which is like for, I think most of you know what that is, but some people online might not know. So that's a meeting often referred to as 12-step meetings, and this helps people to conquer their addictions, whatever they might be. It could be to alcohol, to drugs, to food, to sex, whatever it is. They have all different groups. But the process is the same. You follow these 12 steps, and this is supposed to help you. And it's a spiritual program. And in the beginning of every meeting, they read the 12 steps, and they read a little preamble before that. And then I wanted to read this part here. It says, they say, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. So in this way, we can, I think it's the same for Krishna consciousness, right? People that are not able to be very honest with themselves and others have a really hard time progressing in Krishna consciousness. And one thing I also really like about the 12 steps is the whole steps are set up to bring you to God, right? So at the last step, the 12th step, is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all our affairs, right? So why am I bringing that up? I think because I've often found that Krishna consciousness in many ways, or the 12-step programs in many ways, are like Krishna consciousness, right? In 12-step programs, you have a sponsor you have to learn from, and you do what they do, and they teach you on how to extract yourself from this terrible addiction that you have, right? And in Krishna consciousness, instead of a sponsor, we have a guru, and they teach us how to extract ourselves from this terrible addiction that we have, which is Maya, right? And so what is necessary in both Krishna consciousness and in 12-step meetings is rigorous honesty and self-reflection, and to use your intelligence, as Prabhupada says in this purport. Yeah, one should, by deliberate consideration, raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness. And so we want to use our intelligence, use that deliberate consideration to raise ourselves up. And so we know that purifying our senses will make it much easier for us to be able to see the places where we need to do that work, right? And we need to have a genuine feeling of regret for the wrongs that we've done. And I think for so many people, it's so hard to even see that what they were doing was displeasing to God, right? It's so hard to even see that. I mean, there's so many people that are out there, having affairs, or just eating hamburgers, or doing, even cheating their friends and neighbors, right? And they're doing it. It's so normalized now that you don't even realize it's wrong, because you're like, oh, everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. It must be okay. And I remember, being in school and seeing the whole crowd of people kind of doing something that I knew was wrong, and I thought, oh, that's wrong. But I thought, well, they're all doing it. I guess it's just what we're supposed to do. And then I would do it too, even though I kind of had an idea that it was wrong. And then after you do those things so long, you kind of forget that it was wrong to begin with, because it just becomes normal. So purifying our senses helps us to kind of get back to that state where we know, hey, wait a minute, this isn't okay. I've seen videos of young children, and their parents are feeding them meat, and they're asking, what the child is asking, what is this? Why is it called chicken? And they say, well, because it was a chicken. And I've seen this several videos of children kind of getting very angry at this, very upset, and they say, no, I don't want to eat a chicken. Chickens are my friends, or a cow or whatever it is. And so those children, they know. And I remember going through something similar when I was younger. I didn't. My family used to make fun of me because I didn't want to eat meat. And then I remember my mother saying to me, "Oh, well, you only want to eat meat if it's like like a chicken nugget or something like that, where there's no bones, skin, or anything." And it's like, well, yeah, because it's the form in which it's least like meat, where I can least remember that this was once an animal, right? When the bones are there and the skin is there, you know this is an animal, right? And so I think some people, when they're born, they kind of know these things, and then gradually through bad association, you can forget these things. Okay, so yeah, and then there needs to be a genuine feeling of regret for these things. I've seen this in all aspects of society, but the example is so good in the Christian society because they have the concept of confession, right? In the Catholic Church, they have the concept of confession where, okay, I do some wrongs, I go to the priest, I confessed what I did, he gives me a penance to do, and then I'm absolved. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good if it's done with genuine thought and regret for the wrong that you did. But I've personally seen so many people that commit so many abominable actions, then go to confession and confess and do their penance, and then do the same exact thing that they did before they confess, the same exact abominable action they do again. And that's because that regret wasn't genuine. Just kind of thinking, oh, yes, I'm going to do this. I'll confess my sins. Now I'm absolved. Now I can just do it again. And that's not the proper attitude. We know when Jesus said, when he forgave someone of his sins, he said, now go and sin no more. Right? He said, don't do it again, basically. So it's important to really have that genuine feeling of regret. And so the other thing that's really important in taking up Krishna conscious life and in 12-step meetings is surrendering, right? Surrendering to your spiritual master, or in 12-step meetings, surrendering to your sponsor. And this is very important. So we know the spiritual master is important. So in the purport, there was a verse from the 7th canto that was quoted. And so I'm going to read the translation of that verse. Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined toward materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, in this way can one be freed from material contamination. So the spiritual master is incredibly important. This is a really great book. I use it a lot. It's called The Spiritual Master and the Disciple. And it's just got so much really nice quotes about the importance of the spiritual master and the different aspects of the spiritual master. So this is from the 11th canto. My dear king, a disciple has to accept the spiritual master, not only as spiritual master, but also as the representative of the supreme personality of Godhead and the supersoul. In other words, the disciple should accept the spiritual master as God because he is the external manifestation of Krishna. And let's see. This is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. According to the deliberate opinion of all revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non-different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of spiritual master, delivers his devotees. So we can see that the spiritual master should be respected as God himself because he's preaching the message of Krishna, right? He's preaching that message and he's helped bringing you home. It's a bit like, an ambassador. An ambassador will get, often all the respects and pomp and glory of the country that he's representing, right? That doesn't mean that he is that country, right? But he's getting all that pomp, and glory, and respect of that country because that's what he's representing. So, yeah. So here we go. This is from the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Only unto those great souls who simultaneously have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So, souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master. I mean, and then all the imports of Vedic knowledge is automatically revealed. It's just amazing. Let's see, I have a few more. I'm so sorry, I have all these quotes, but they're so good. Let's see. Here we go. As bell metal is turned to gold when mixed with mercury in the alchemical process, so one who is properly trained and initiated by a bona fide spiritual master immediately becomes a brahmana. And this one is really beautiful. If the conditioned soul engages in the service of the Lord and simultaneously carries out the orders of his spiritual master and serves him, he can get out of the clutches of Maya and become eligible for shelter at Krishna's lotus feet. I mean, this sounds like a good deal to me. Let's see. Yes, and this one's very important. For devotional life, one must first become a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. Das anudas. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, and he always showed by his own example, that a living entity should always desire to be a servant of Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. This means that one must accept a spiritual master who comes in the disciplic succession and is a servant of the Lord. And it's said that Krishna is actually more pleased by us serving his servants than by serving him, right? And so, I mean, that's wonderful for us because we have so many servants of the servants of the servants here, right? And so by serving the servant of the servant of the servant, we can please Krishna in that way. So surrender is really important. So we know the Bhagavad Gita says, first, so the Bhagavad Gita says, you have a right to perform your duties, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction. So this verse kind of emphasizes the importance of sort of surrendering the results of our actions, basically, to more or less do the right thing, whether that action, the results of that is going to be, good or bad for you, depending on how that works out. To not have attachment to the results, like to go out on books at the university, and whether or not people take the books or not, at least you're still trying, right? And usually someone will take some, but sometimes some days are bad and it just doesn't work out. But I mean, would it be, should you like go home and cry about it and be like, oh, I'm not going, no one's taking them? No, of course not. Don't be attached to those results. Just keep doing it. All right. So the Bhagavad Gita also tells us, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So this part has two really important parts to this verse. One is to submissively inquire to a spiritual master. And the other is that they can impart knowledge unto you because they've seen the truth. They've seen it. So they can tell you, right? Okay. So, and of course, the Bhagavad Gita says, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So you don't need to worry. Oh gosh, what if I can't do this? This is me this morning. Oh gosh, what if I can't give this class? I was going to prepare last night and I didn't have time. I didn't have time to prepare at all last night because it was quite a bit busier in the restaurant than I anticipated. And then this morning I was going to prepare, and my godbrother who told me he wasn't able to come and dress Lord Nrsimhadev and little Lord Gopal. Could I please do that? And I was like, oh gosh, and I'm thinking now I'm really not going to be able to prepare. So because I already have to dress Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman. But I thought, okay, well, I said, Krishna, if you want me to say something and give this class, then please give me something to say because I don't think I'm going to have time to really prepare anything. And I think he gave me a few ideas. So yeah. So you don't need to be afraid when you surrender, like, oh gosh, what if I can't do it, right? What if I'm not able to do it, or because I think a lot of people worry about that. If I surrender to this, what's going to happen in the other aspects of my life, right? But Krishna tells us, he promises us that he will preserve what we have and carry what we lack. So it's very comforting to know that. And of course, 1866, we know this verse, abandon all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So we know that Krishna is going to take care of us, to protect us, right? So, okay. So in today's society, we have this tendency to reject authority and be proud, and generally, like, I think generally this is pretty much seen as a good thing nowadays, to reject authority. And but really it's like you're on a boat with no rudder. You're just kind of aimlessly wandering around, because authority is, I mean, not in all cases, certainly not. There's part of the reason that our society right now is rejecting authorities is because there's been so many false authorities, right? There's been so many authorities that did not deserve to be authorities, that did not actually have any true authority. But Krishna, he is a true authority. And the spiritual master, as long as he is bringing you closer to Krishna and helping you build that relationship with Krishna, he's a true authority, right? And so by kind of hanging on to that attitude of reject authority, that can be really detrimental to your spiritual life and your spiritual growth. Because we surrender to the spiritual master because he's seen the truth. That's what it says in the Bhagavad Gita. So we also start by gradually giving respect. Srila Prabhupada talks about us purport to give up our false prestige, our puffed up position. And sometimes you might think, oh, well, I don't have any false prestige or puffed up position, but like most of us do, most of us have some kind of false prestige. And this is why part of why we pay obeisances, because this is the beginning of surrender. It also shows respect to the spiritual master, to the deities, to other devotees, right? We pay obeisances to one another. We pay obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, to the deities, to our spiritual masters. And this is a physical manifestation of our surrender, right? It's sort of the beginning of, sort of letting go of these this false prestige that we have in our puffed up position, because we often hear, I've heard, it's usually like a man saying, like, I will bow down to no man, right? You've heard that, yeah, and that's because they have this kind of puffed up attitude, like, I'm not going to debase myself, and put myself at the mercy of this other person, right? And alternately, like I've also seen, people who are very puffed up that, hear stories of, rulers and stuff in the past that were very puffed up that would get very upset if people did not bow down to them, right? And again, that's also kind of being puffed up, because the true position is we should give all respect to others and not expect any for ourselves, right? Even a lowly ant, right? And so, yeah, and this is why we pay obeisances. It's only by this association with the spiritual master and the other devotees that we can attain this true wisdom, right? So there's a few stories in the Bhagavatam that sort of illustrate this importance of the spiritual master. Of course, the first one I thought of is Narada Muni and Dhruva, right? Dhruva Maharaj, he was insulted by his stepmother. He was so enraged. He wanted to show her by getting a kingdom greater than his father's, his grandfather's. And when he asked his mother what to do, she told him he needed to go ask God. He needed to go out to ask Krishna. Which ironically is also what his stepmother said, but for a different reason, because his stepmother said, if you want to sit on your father's lap, well, then you need to die and be born again. Go ask Krishna to die and be born again from my womb, so you can sit on your father's lap, which is so harsh to say to a little boy. I mean, a little 5-year-old child, you can't sit on your father's lap. I mean, I can imagine how painful that was. And so, in anger and desire to show his stepmother and his father also, he went to the forest at the instructions of his mother and also a little bit his stepmother, and started looking for God, looking for Krishna. He's looking around, and he ran into Narada Muni, who instructed him in how to attain Krishna, how to attain that. And he taught him how to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord. And when he did so many austerities too, which I'm not even going to list them, but really incredible austerities for a little 5-year-old boy, for anyone, but especially for a little 5-year-old boy. And so all of a sudden he managed to see the Lord in his meditation, and he was just wow. And then suddenly he couldn't see him, and he opens his eyes, and there he is. There's the Lord right in front of him. I mean, and poor little Dhruva, he's just sort of dumbstruck. He can't speak, and the Lord kind of just taps him on the head with his conch, and suddenly Dhruva is able to say all these beautiful prayers. And Dhruva realizes what he desired was nothing compared to actually seeing the Lord face to face, and that he didn't even want it anymore. He just wanted to serve the Lord. And but too bad Dhruva got it anyway. He got what he wanted anyway, and he got to see the Lord face to face. And that's because Dhruva listened to Narada Muni. He listened to his spiritual master. He followed his instructions, and this is what allowed Dhruva to be able to see the Lord face to face and also get his desires met, right? Another story that illustrates this is the story of Prahlad, and again, Narada Muni. Narada Muni's in, I think, like most of these stories. Yeah, out of the 4 little stories I have, Narada Muni's the spiritual master in 3 of them. So, but yeah, so then there's Prahlad Maharaj and Narada Muni, right? So Prahlad, he was the son of the demon Hiranyakashipu, and his father, was trying to kill him because Prahlad was actually such a wonderful devotee of the Lord. And still, Prahlad was saved. Every time his father tried to kill him, Prahlad was saved by the Lord. And how Prahlad became this great devotee of the Lord was when he was in his mother's womb. Narada Muni came and was kind of preaching to his mother, and Prahlad heard this in the womb, and he became enlightened and a wonderful devotee of the Lord because of that. And so when he grew up and his father was just so horrible to him and trying to kill him in so many different ways, this didn't have an effect on his faith. He was able to keep this strong faith because he had listened to the words of Narada Muni, listened to the words of his spiritual master, and really took them to heart. And yeah, I mean, just amazing. And then we have Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva and Narada Muni. So Srila Vyasadeva, he was compiling all the Vedas. He was which is huge. I just heard a lecture from Indra Yumaswamy this morning, and he said to read all the Vedas would take 3 lifetimes. So I never heard that before, but wow. So 3 lifetimes to read all the Vedas. So Srila Vyasadeva, he compiled all these Vedas, and he was feeling kind of still dejected. He was feeling bummed out. And Narada Muni pointed out to him, and that's because he didn't properly glorify the Lord and had him write the Srimad Bhagavatam, compose the Srimad Bhagavatam because of that. And so that story points out, Vyasadeva was a great devotee, a very advanced devotee, right? But still, Narada Muni was able, in the role of his spiritual master, to guide him in such a way to say, hey, wait a minute, you forgot about this, right? So even very experienced, advanced devotees can benefit from their association with their spiritual master. And then the last story I have is Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami, right? So we know Maharaj Parikshit, he was cursed to die in 7 days because he had upset the son of a great sage by putting a dead snake around the great sage's neck when he was in meditation, because he thought that sage was ignoring him. And that sage's son got very upset and cursed him to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird. And therefore we have the whole narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because Sukadeva Goswami Maharaj Parikshit went to Sukadeva Goswami and said, what do I do? I have 7 days before I die. What am I supposed to know? How do I prepare for this? And so the entire Srimad Bhagavatam was narrated to him, which is what we're reading now. And so this story sort of really highlights the importance of hearing from a self-realized soul and how important that is to do before you die, right? That prepares us for our next life with Krishna. So in our timeline, we have the story of Srila Prabhupada, right? And he didn't even have so much contact with his spiritual master, but his spiritual master told him the first time he met him that I want you to preach in the West in English, right? And it took him so many years, right, to actually fulfill that instruction of his spiritual master. But he did it. He, spent so much of his life trying other ways to help bring Krishna consciousness to people. And then finally, when he's 69 years old, he comes here to the US with basically like $8 in his pocket and a trunk full of the first 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto. And now look at what he's achieved, right? There's thousands of temples all over the world. There's millions of devotees, and all because he had faith in the words of his spiritual master. He didn't know how he was going to do it. And I mean, at 70 years old, most people are thinking about playing golf or, making cookies for their grandkids or going on a nice trip to, for leisure, not, going to the slums of New York City and trying to get these people that are completely downtrodden to become brahmanas, right? I mean, that's amazing. It's amazing. And that's all because of the faith that Srila Prabhupada had in the words of his spiritual master. And then we look at our own Mother Sundamani, the faith that she had in her spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And her ability to start this place and keep it running so nicely. And I mean, how many devotees in the Tucson area would there be if she didn't have that faith in the words of her spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, right? I mean, there probably would not be very many, but instead, because she had that faith in her spiritual master, who had faith in his spiritual master, we have this beautiful temple here and this nice association, these nice friendships. I wouldn't even know any of you if it wasn't for the faith that Mother Sundamani had in her spiritual master, right? And so I think we'll end with this. I want to ask you guys to tell me about a time that you had to surrender in your spiritual life. What was that like? And I'll start with this one. It's a little bit silly, and it was just the beginning of my surrender, which I keep trying to do more and more every day. But when I first started reading, The Science of Self-Realization first, and in that book they're talking about everything. Really, it's like a really great book. I mean, it's just like kind of a great overview of the philosophy, and then practical information of how to chant, how to set up an altar. I mean, it's just really, I mean, it has everything you need in there to get started. And so, they talk a lot about chanting in there. And I remember for whatever reason, I was into the book, but I was just like reluctant to start chanting. I don't know why. I just was like reluctant. I just was just like, I don't know. And so this is kind of silly, but the first time I chanted, I couldn't sleep. I was going through some troubles and I couldn't sleep. And so I lived way out on the east side, and I decided I'm just going to go, it's like the middle of the night. I'm just going to go walk out like in the desert, basically. I started walking east towards the mountains, and there's like nothing out there. And so it's like it's really dark, and like it's getting darker because there's no more street lights or anything like that. And I'm in the middle of the desert. And like a few days before that, I had watched a documentary about big cats, like tigers and mountain lions and things, and how nowadays they're actually coming into the cities and hunting, like little rodents and things, and that the people in the cities, they don't even know. And they were showing like these infrared images of like people just walking, and then you can see like this big cat come and like, get a squirrel or a rabbit or something, and the people don't have a clue, right? That they're right next to this big cat that could totally kill them, right? And so I'm, in the middle of the desert, in the dark, freaking myself out, thinking, we have big cats here. We've got mountain lions. There's even been some jaguar sightings, so I start freaking myself out, thinking like a big cat is going to come and get me, and I'm in the middle of the desert. And so I thought, I better go home. So, and there was nothing there. I was just freaking myself out, but I was really scared. So I start turning around, and I'm really far from home, and I start like running back to my house, and I'm really freaked out. And I thought, maybe I should chant that mantra. And so I started chanting that mantra, and I chanted it the whole way home, and I ran as fast as I could home, and I chanted it the whole way home. And guess what? A big cat didn't get me. So I don't think that's a coincidence. No. That was the first time I ever chanted the mantra, and I chanted it every day since. And so that was the beginning of my surrender right there. So with that, we have a few minutes if anyone has one little story about when they had to surrender. Anybody?
I think it's serving now. I remember Ron Schwar was my spiritual master, and he was big into book distribution. And I was very fearful of approaching people. And so I had to pray really hard to Lord Chaitanya. And I did well, he reciprocated with me, thankfully. And, but I would always hear my dad, oh, everybody's got their hand out,
Right.
And so that was like clouded me, but yeah. So I had to surrender, and
it worked out.
Yeah. It was actually very blissful. Sankirtan,
Yeah.
There's just been different times in my devotional life where you start a project. Like in one instance was in Denver, we were repainting the entire temple room, and it's much bigger than here. And so we've had I had help, but financial help and help with the labor, but the people pulled out. So then you're left with, is this project abandoned, or are you just going to keep going and see it through and get it done? You're going to surrender to it and finish it, no matter what it takes. So I've had that a few times where, the money pulled out, so it's all on you. The help is pulled out, so it's all on you. But you just, you agreed to do this, so you just see it, you stick it out, you just tough it out. So a few times I've had to.
Yeah. You just do it. All right. That's wonderful. And then it worked out. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
And it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
When it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems impossible. And then when it's done, you're like, wow, okay, we did it. Yeah. Yeah. All right. We'll end there. All right. Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.